This is Michael Spedden, and welcome to Fowl Players Radio, your one-stop shop for all of your pop culture needs. We feature interviews from musicians, actors, comics, dancers, authors, and much, much more, up-and-coming artists and beloved favorites. We've got it all, people on stage, backstage, out front, and behind the scenes. Sit back and relax. Let's have some fun. Folks, Michael Spedden here, and welcome back to Fowl Players Radio, season number 11. We've got 11, and tonight our guest is Greg Sinners. He's come back again to talk to us. He's been a guest on here several times before, and he's always a pleasure to talk to because he's got lots of great stories about the old Baltimore music scene, what it was like playing around here years ago, and lots of stories that a number of listeners have told me they've really enjoyed. So he's back tonight to talk about his new song, When I'm Here. We talked about the recording of the song itself, who performed on it with him, and the video that's out. There's a lot of great footage of both personal of him and his cousins and his family, and the area in general where we both kind of grew up, the Baltimore metro area. So Greg rejoined us tonight, and I had a great time talking to him and everything. You can find his material www.gssongs.com as well as on YouTube. It's www.youtube.com/@Greg Sinners, and you'll find his whole catalog of videos there as well. So, folks, we'll be back with Greg Sinners right after these words. Make sure you stick around. We'll be right back.
Hey, it's Keith Brewer from whatever band you please, the Ravens, Company of Wolves, Barley Juice, and you're listening to Fowl Players Radio.
Hi, this is Keith Mack, and you're listening to Fowl Players Radio.
And welcome back to another episode of Fowl Players Radio. Michael Spedden here, and we have a returning guest, a good friend, been on the show a number of times, has tons of stories, tons of great experiences to talk about, been making lots of great music for many, many years, and all the bands that he's been in, and now on his own with ensemble of various people. It's Greg Sinners is back to see us tonight. So, Greg, welcome back. Good to see you, bud. How are you?
Hey, Mike. Good to be back. Doing good.
Absolutely. Well, it's always a pleasure to have you on here. I really enjoy when I can get folks that have great stories that are more than willing to participate and take the time to come on and share them. There's a lot of great history in our area that I really enjoy sharing, and there's a lot of people that really enjoy either hearing it for the first time or hearing it kind of again. They were sort of around or maybe peripherally there, that enjoy hearing it again or reminiscing about it. So again, I thank you for being with us today. So you've got some new material out, a new song that you want to talk about to us today. So tell us a bit about this and what the song is about. I've seen the video, and you've got a lot of old Baltimore imagery, which I really enjoyed in it. So tell us about the new song.
Well, it's called When I'm Here, and it is about Baltimore, or about me when I return to Baltimore to visit.
Mm-hmm.
That's essentially what it's about. It's about my life in Baltimore.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When I used to live there, and I moved away 30 years ago.
Sure. Yeah.
But when I go back to visit, that's what the song is about.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about how, well, part of it at least is about how everything has changed so much.
Yes. Yes.
And the opening line in the song says, "Here I am to visit this old ground of mine. All that was has changed, and I am now a stranger."
Mm-hmm.
And what that means is when I go back to my old neighborhood, I don't know anyone there any longer. Everyone moved or died. And there's one person left. I presume he might remember me. He moved in, this neighbor I'm talking about moved in pretty close to around the time I was moving out.
Right. Sure.
So he probably would remember me, but I haven't seen him in 30 years.
Right. Yeah, and I really understand where you're coming from on this, because first of all, the city at large, I moved out about 12 years ago, and I still go down there for work and business and things like that. But in particular, my old neighborhood, where my stomping grounds, the section I grew up in, I was in the county. I mean, it's drastically changed. Nobody's on my street anymore, or even in the, you know, central neighborhood. There's maybe a handful left.
Yeah.
But yeah, and the thing is that, you get to see how things change, I guess, physically or aesthetically.
Yeah.
A lot of, decline.
That too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, it's there's a number of, I mean, there's been like Twilight Zone episodes about that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Some of them have kind of like a Rip Van Winkle storyline to it, where somebody was just they wake up one day and everything's gone or
Yeah.
different. And I guess you could kind of say that it is true. I mean, a number of people do say sometimes you can never go home again.
Yeah, that's an old line from a book.
Mm-hmm.
Can't remember the name of the book now, but that's the theme of it. You
Mm-hmm.
can never go home again, meaning things are never the same. And it happens to every generation.
Mm-hmm.
One generation passes and there's a new one. So
Right.
that's
Right.
how it is.
The
Yeah.
tradition, the thing is, the fiber of the area change, the tradition changes.
Yeah.
Sometimes things that were big and important to people growing up, years ago are gone now. Those institutions change, you
Mhm.
know. It's and I can get, kind of, and again, I'm kind of giving examples of how I identify with what you've said here. You go through and you see even places like churches boarded up.
They're closing a lot of them in Baltimore City. Yeah.
Yeah. Houses being torn down and boarded up. Um, Abandoned areas, almost like a ghost town. The only thing missing is the tumbleweeds and the horse skeleton that collapses when you walk by,
Right. Right. I
Right.
grew up in the Hamilton area,
Yeah.
northeast end of Baltimore
Hmm.
City.
Right. Right.
And so yeah, it's, that's really, the song is about that, about
Hmm.
when I'm here, when I go back.
And the thing is too is that I really liked what you did with in terms of the video itself. Um, the sounds of this song with the vocals in it and the instrumentation and the imagery that you put in there, from a lot of the footage at the beginning, it was kind of from, not only of you, I guess, but of the era you were growing up in, and it kind of went through time, and it
Hmm.
really fit together well, I thought, as like a this is your life type of thing. Tell
Yeah.
us about, I guess, some of the places and the people that are in the video, because you really did kind of make this semi autobiographical.
Yeah. It's pictures of family members, me and my parents, aunts, uncles, cousins,
Mm-hmm.
friends, former bandmates,
Oh yeah.
everybody that I put in the video was of someone that was significant to me
Mm-hmm.
at some point in my life. Yeah. So that's the pictures of the little kids in the early on, they're my cousins.
Right.
I
Okay.
have
Okay.
several cousins, but they're the ones that I really spent a lot of time with as a kid.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you had mentioned too that I know at least one of your cousins you performed with for a good while.
Yeah, Danny
Yeah.
Antoine. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
in Silver Queen.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I've seen him perform. I think he performed with us that one night in the coffee house, and a good player. Definitely a
Yeah.
good player.
Yeah.
I think, didn't you tell me that he left to join the Navy or something?
Yeah, in 1979.
Right. Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, because it looked like there was a group of four of you.
That's them.
That's the cousins. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Looked like what was it, Easter or something? You're all wearing your suits and
It probably was. And I was trying to figure out, would that have been an Easter or Christmas picture or what? I
mhm.
think it was Easter because of no one was wearing heavy clothing.
Yeah, that's what I would think too.
So I think it was probably Easter time.
Right, right. But that was the thing, is that a lot of the other footage that you had in there was, you're not from Baltimore, especially from, the time I grew up and when you grew up. If you don't remember downtown, the department stores.
Yeah.
And I think it was pretty much right off the bat, you had a good, image of, a city bus with, I think it was Stewart's in the background, maybe, or
I think it was.
Shavitz.
Yeah.
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 Quite in, those are, were definite institutions of the time. And, and then later on, as the video progressed, kind of moved through life, then you had some imagery in there a little bit later on that just wasn't, almost kind of made it look like things come to a crashing and burning end there.
Well, unfortunately, the city has declined considerably. And that's the result of poor government.
Yeah.
That's who controls those factors.
Yeah, I would say.
And so it does start out, with me as a little kid, and the people that were in my life at that time when when we were all young like that.
Right.
And different people, and not just family, but I mean other people that I became acquainted with over the years that are also in the video. Different people will come into your life, and you don't realize how influential some of them will turn out to be. Still a longer passage of time. Then you look back and you think, if they weren't there in my life, who would have been in their place? And I think about this with people I've played with in bands, family members, lots of different situations. You don't usually, nobody decides who's going to come into their life. They just they show up.
You're right.
And the question is whether or not you keep them around. Do you play in a band with them? Do you remain an acquaintance of theirs? And do they choose to stay?
Sure. Yeah.
As well. So there were people that I put in the video. Like I say, everybody had some significance. And there were 4 people in particular that I never, in my other videos, it wasn't the place to recognize them, because it didn't have anything to do with the video.
Right.
Where this video does. This is a video where I would say, now it's worth mentioning. And now's the time to acknowledge some of these people.
Sure.
That were influential. One of them, and never thought of the significance of this at the time, but there's 4 people that really come to mind. And again, they're not the 4 most significant people in my life of all time, but they were significant in my musical portion of my life. And also they were great friends, and some of them still are.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, of these 4 people that I'm talking about, 3 of them have passed.
Oh, yeah.
But the other people, there's other people in the video that haven't. But in terms of the 4 that I thought really needed and deserved some recognition, one of them was a guy named Mike Cantor. I met him in high school. We were a year apart. We had a mutual friend, and that's how I got to know him.
Yeah.
When I was putting the Silver Queen together, he's the one that said to me, "What are you going to do for lights? Do you have a light man?" I never gave it a thought, really.
Right, right.
And he said, well, he'd like to do lights for us. And I was like, yeah, that's a great idea. And so he told me pretty much what to get. And I went out and bought the materials, and I built these little light boxes. They were very unsophisticated,
Right, right, right. Well,
but
a
they
lot of
did the
people
job.
did.
We
Hmm.
were 17 years old,
Sure, yeah,
just getting started. So they did the job. A little while later, I don't know, maybe a year or so. I'm not sure the passage of time now, but he ended up getting another set of lights, a better set.
sure, yeah.
So, and he was with us for several years,
Right, right.
and really contributed a lot to the appearance, because nobody in the band at that time, when we were getting close to being ready to play out, nobody at that time had ever said, "Hey, what are we going to do about lights?"
Yeah, I know.
It really just hadn't occurred to us, but it
Mhm.
did him. You know,
And the other thing too is that at those times it really wasn't until later on where clubs always had the house lights, house PA. I mean, I can remember.
sometimes, yeah.
I mean, when I was in high school, I befriend. That's actually how I met you, through some friends. I befriended some older friends of mine that were used to let me hang around and watch and learn. But
Hmm.
the payment for that, or the exchange for that, was lugging that community PA up and down
Yeah.
steps and in and out of clubs with them at the end of the night. And after a while, some of the clubs said, well, maybe we could get our own stuff and make it a little easier. But
Hmm.
in those
Yeah.
days, I tell you what, you had your work cut out for you with that.
Yeah.
And there was a sound man and a light man. But early on, when you didn't have resources, you learned how to do these things yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
And Mike and I, again, we met in high school. We ended
Hmm.
up being friends
Right,
all the
right.
way up into our early 50s, and he passed in
Mm,
2007. Uh,
yeah.
but we ended up remaining friends till
Mhm.
the end, all that time.
Yeah. Yeah. So one thing, that you and I talk about, whenever we just have a conversation, is, I've been in, entertainment and different genres for years. You too, the bands, the projects and everything. There's always something. Nothing can ever go smoothly. It seems like there's
No,
always a bump in the road. There's always something that just, the wheels fall off the wagon somehow, and you just got to dust off and rub some dirt on it and keep moving.
there will always be a train wreck.
Yes, yes, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. It must have been frustrating for you, and yeah, I've had my own frustrations as well in the endeavors I've been in. Dealing with band members, sometimes with actors, sometimes with anybody else that a club owner, a venue
Hmm.
owner, something like that. And it seems like it's always back to the drawing board. I think I've been back to the drawing board maybe as many times as you. I'm not sure.
Yeah. It is frustrating. Um, over the you know over the time when I was putting bands together, some of them worked out, some of them didn't. The one thing was I was able to keep progressing with my original material,
Yes, yes.
and and that's the main benefit from it. And I
Hmm.
tell you, a couple of people that were very influential with that. Um, when I left Silver Queen, that was what I wanted to do. I was like, we got to do original material,
Hmm.
but that really wasn't their forte, and there was no interest in it,
Hmm.
from the other members. And so anyway, as soon as I left, I started working. We did one song, one original of mine in Silver Queen. But as soon as I left, just started. That's all I did was write music, work on
Hmm.
that. And there was, I was putting a band together. It was one of these bands that never got out of the basement, never went anywhere. Too many personality disorders in the band. So, yeah. So anyway, it never went anywhere. But the there's a friend of mine, Steve Diffendahl, and I knew him, but I wasn't friends with him. I just knew him. We kind of knew who each other were. And he knew somebody that was in that band I'm talking about. So he would come over sometimes to practice. Anyway, when I left that band, he contacted me. He came over to my house and wanted to put a band together, and I really wasn't interested. And he came back a couple times, and he'd always have his bass guitar, and he'd say, let's just play. So one day we did, and it clicked immediately.
Right.
Immediately. And we were writing songs right off the bat, and they sounded really, really good. And then he said, well, I know a drummer, and that was a guy by the name of Fred Layfield. And so he brings him over. And the three of us sounded awesome. Doing original material, it just completely clicked. And this is one of the situations about maybe 6 months after I got to know Fred, he was killed. He was hit by a car and killed.
Oh, geez.
And, Danny was in that band, but we had not played out. And then that's around the time when Danny left to join the Navy. A couple weeks after he left, this is in 1979, Fred was killed. So, we got a new drummer and we got a new guitar player, and the band became Edward Teach, which was named after the pirate Blackbeard.
Okay.
We played one job doing all original material. We played a concert at Essex Community College.
Great.
And it was soon after that, Steve moved to California, where he still lives. I still talk to him all the time. We've always remained in contact, great friends. Been out to California a few times to visit him over the years. And Fran was in that band also.
Okay.
So anyway, after he moved, things in the band they were not going anywhere. It ended up folding. Fran and I reformed another group, but one of the things we found out, even though we had recordings that we had made with Fred on drums and Steve on bass, the new players did not have the same feel, the same groove. They could not do it. They could not replicate what those two did. And it's even with them working off of recordings. And it's like, just play it like it is on the recording.
Yeah.
Well, it didn't sound right. It never had the same feel. So that's when I realized that really the drums and the bass in a rock band is what makes it.
Yes. Yeah.
Because prior to that, especially with doing original material, because prior to that, all my experience had been in playing cover music. And when somebody would leave, you just got somebody else in that could play the cover material. And it was plug in a new member type of thing.
Yeah, right.
It wasn't difficult. When you're writing the music and you have those individuals' personal style and technique on them, it's a world of difference.
Yes.
So Fran and I ended up putting together what became Tail Gunner. And many of the songs that we had done, original songs in Edward Teach, we stopped doing them because we just didn't like the way they sounded.
Sure, yeah.
And Tail Gunner did a blend of cover and original, but it did a lot of original, but it had a totally different sound. We were not trying to recreate Edward Teach any longer. It couldn't be done. So That's what led to the birth of Tail Gunner.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
And
that's what came out of that.
those of you listening at home have heard Tail Gunner on the back of the rack. We've spun a couple of songs, Sassy for one. And
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's gotten a good response too. I really like the sound of that.
Yeah, so Tail Gunner put out a 45. We've talked about that before.
Mm-hmm.
The song Sassy, and then the other side was called 10 Years. To this day, Sassy gets a lot of views. It's over 500 views
Mm-hmm.
on the website and on the YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
It's a retro sounding song because it was written in the late 70s.
Right, right.
But it's getting listened to.
Mm-hmm. It reminds me a lot of, among other things, it reminds me a lot of earlier UFO.
Okay.
And I guess that's one of those things that's kind of in the ear of the beholder, but it does remind me. It does have the bass and drums and the groove of it. They just kind of remind me of that sound, the Pete Way. And God, the drummer escapes me, but what they had like around the rock bottom era.
Yeah, it's was written in that era.
Yeah,
the influence. Yeah.
Yep. And it's a great song. The vocals on it are good. Of course, guitar playing is exemplary, right?
Well, the vocals are Fran.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The guitar player, I mean, the opening and the main riff throughout the song is me.
Yeah, yeah.
We had a guy named Dean Manna who played the lead on that.
Oh, okay, right, right. Mm-hmm. I think we've mentioned him before. I think maybe other interviews or at least in our conversations. And that was like I said, that's a great song, and people have asked me about it too when I've spun it on 97 Underground, and it holds up. I mean, what can you say? It holds up.
Yeah, it's retro, but it does hold up.
It does. It really is. It's a good song, and so
well,
the things in your working relationship, again, from I guess after that band, I guess was what was next after Tail Gunner?
Tail Gunner was pretty successful. It played out a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
We had the 45 out.
Mm-hmm.
It was around that time. I forget the exact year now, but it was around that time when Sassy was chosen to be on that Baltimore compilation album.
Was it the one radio station?
I think it was WKTK.
Maybe. Oh yeah, that sounds right. Yeah.
They put out a compilation album of Baltimore bands, and we were selected to be on that.
Yeah.
The song Sassy was on that. So anyway, the band did well. It played around quite a bit. It eventually, combination of I don't know, just personality disorders.
Don't I know it?
And just maybe some of the people were just getting on each other's nerves. Maybe anyway. There have been so many of them. Some of it's a kind of a burnout. Like I don't really remember what the definitive event was that the group ended. I just remember at one point, Fran and I decided to leave. I don't remember what precipitated that, but I think it's probably, just not happy with the way things were going with it. So that was the end of that. I don't remember the time. I don't remember the year, but it was somewhere after that. Fran moved to California.
Oh, right.
And he was out there for a few years, and then he returned to Maryland. You'd have to ask him how many years he lived out there because I don't remember now. But I went on to put another band together, and the guitar player in that band was the fourth person. I mentioned there were four people. I think I said four at the beginning of this conversation, and I said this person I'm talking about now, Dave Bradley, incredible guitar player. I was putting a new band together. He answered the ad for the guitarist, got him in the band. We ended up that band ended up playing out too. Bob Knight was in that band.
Oh, good old Bob.
Yeah, yeah. So that was where we all came together. That's when I met Bob, when he joined that band putting together. It was called Axis Sally.
Okay.
I was in the name of that band. And we played a few times, not a huge amount, but well, more than a few times. But anyway, Dave, I ended up becoming very good friends with. We used to do a lot of outdoor stuff like canoeing, kayaking. We went caving.
You're nuts.
Went hiking on the Appalachian Trail.
Yeah, good grief. That's
we were
on the surface it sounds rather benign, but you can get into some stuff doing that.
I tell you what, caving.
No. Thank you.
That is a dicey experience.
Yes, it is.
Because you walk into the cave, but it quickly narrows down, and caving usually involves crawling through tubes.
Yes, which is something I'm never doing, but you can.
And it was a little edgy at times.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, we like doing that sort of stuff. And so we ended up becoming friends even after the band years. And he moved to Nashville.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. What were you
gonna say? This the same fellow that you went kayaking to Carroll Island with?
No, that was a different guy.
Oh, geez, a whiz, man. I tell you.
That guy, and we didn't canoe or kayak. He had an inflatable
that's right.
raft.
Oh God.
And we paddled across the shipping lane there by the Key Bridge and paddled out to Carroll Island and climbed up on the debris of the place by the front entrance of it.
Yeah, yeah.
And we got up on there and we carried the raft in with us because we couldn't leave the water, it drifted away. And I mean, we could have tied it up, but we didn't really want it to be that obvious that we were in there. So we end up walking across these narrow beams to go in, and we carrying the inflatable raft. Now, that was a friend of mine, no musical connection. I met him when I was in scuba diver training.
Sure.
Which is another thing I used to do. So that's how that event came about. So, and who that was, but he was no musical connection. His name was Jack.
Okay.
But no musical connection. Strictly
right.
I ended up getting partnered up with him when I was in the training class.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. But Dave Bradley, the guitar player, he died at 61 from cancer. Yeah, just a couple years ago.
Yeah.
So, but he ended up living in Nashville. He moved out there. He went to Vanderbilt, got his master's degree. Got married, has 3 kids.
Sure.
And stayed there,
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah. Well, that's good. That's I tell you, the experiences that you end up having with some of your bandmates over the years. And again, too, I mean, it sounds like you've really got some wild ones that, had nothing to do with playing or anything like that, just the stuff that you do outside of it. It sounds like, if you've ever heard the Mr. Ballin podcast,
no,
we won't go down that rabbit hole here, but I'll tell you about it offline. It sounds like something you might really enjoy. But he has a lot of stories about caving, scuba diving, and they're enough to make you cringe because of things that go horribly wrong. But like I said, we won't take your interview time discussing that, but I'll show it to you later.
Yeah.
But like I said, and then, of course, after Axis Sally, the band that we've heard plenty of on my show, and even years ago on 97 Underground Shockwave, being a member of the being chosen again, here you are on these radio station albums, WKTK and 97 Underground, getting one of the original ones on there. And I mention that whenever I play your stuff, hey, somebody from the original album of the original 97 Underground Beast from the East album.
Right.
And you still see them around too, which is kind of neat, that was just and that was such a great thing that that 97 was doing that back then, because it really does show good support, and especially when people are taking the time to play the local stuff. I try to make at least half of my show local original people, because that struggle was mine at one point. And I really do. And the thing is that I wouldn't do it if I didn't think this material was worth hearing. I mean, if it was just crap, I'd just be playing whatever's on on the charts right now. But I think it is worth it. And I think that tell me if you, I mean, I think there were a lot of people that I think in our time got sold short, because there were a number of bands that I've spoken to that were getting contracts around 89, 90. They got but then they kind of got abandoned, or they got no funding for their tours or follow-up albums because of the grunge era that came in.
Yeah. Interesting. There's kind of a repeating pattern. Music styles tend to last on the radio, whatever's selling, whatever's popular. The trends tend to change about every 3 to 4 years. If you look back when the Beatles came to the US in 1964, and that started what was called the British invasion. And you had, and of course the American bands that came along as well. But when you listen to the style of music from, say, 64 to 67, you take the years 64, 65, 66, and into 67, it was all pretty similar. I don't mean the song sounded like I don't mean they all sounded the same, but I mean the style, the pop, the British invasion style. And then 67, 68, music started getting heavier. You had the Jimi Hendrix Experience. Had Cream. A couple years after that, literally, well, like in 69 or 70, Led Zeppelin came along. So music got heavy. And then early 70s, the progressive rock era really kicked in with bands like Yes, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Jethro Tull. And then it was a few years after that, mid 70s. So again, we're at this 3 to 4 year interval. Then disco came in. And then new wave came in, and then heavy metal came in the 80s. So there is this 3 to 4 year lifespan and then the trend of music changes. And like you're saying, some of those bands that were rock bands, when the style changed or the trend changed to grunge music, they were kind of viewed as, outdated.
And that was the thing too. They really didn't get a chance to get started or anything. So fast forward 30 some years. A lot of the bands that were on the circuit back in those days, that were playing around here, DC, like my contemporaries and your contemporaries too, with Shockwave. A lot of these guys are either getting the band back together because they're now playing music again. The kids are grown and out of the house. They're able to do it. And there's been a number of them too that have been getting, distribution deals for their material from those days.
Good.
And they're back out again, playing and, sending it my way. I've been giving it spins on my show, but yeah, so yeah, it's good to see that again. That's people are at least getting their due, or at least some unfinished business from those days is being kind of taken care of, and maybe they're getting closure. I don't know, but you know what I'm saying, I think,
It's
right?
it's probably a bit of that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the people who were playing music in that era, they're not young people anymore,
Yep. Mm-hmm.
and maybe it's fun to go back and redo it
Mm-hmm.
again. It's never the same. It
Yeah.
never will.
Yeah.
It never will be the same, and this is why I don't do it.
Right. Right.
I would personally, I would get a kick out of going out and playing the songs that I played in the Silver Queen era.
Mm-hmm.
I would personally get a kick out of doing that, but it would never be the same again
Right. Right.
because everything is different now,
Mm-hmm.
and it's totally different to play those songs when you're 19, 18, 19 years old, 20, as to when you're in your 60s.
Mm-hmm.
Your audience is totally different now.
Yeah.
So it would never be the same, and it's really another classic case of you can never go home again.
Yeah. Right. Here you go. Here we're back to full circle here, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And that was one of the things. Like I say, the my whole contention was, as popular as Silver Queen was, and it was a popular band,
Mm-hmm.
in its time. I was looking ahead, like, well, when we put the band together, we were like, everybody in the band was about 16 or 17 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And we had the attitude like, yeah, we want to make it in music. And we had that ambition. And
Mm-hmm.
after a few years into it, I started looking at it realistically, like, well, we don't have anything original to offer a
Mm-hmm.
record company. We did a lot of Alice Cooper and Led Zeppelin and stuff. Well, Alice Cooper was already doing Alice Cooper.
Sure. Right. Right.
Okay. So, and Led Zeppelin was already doing Led Zeppelin. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's when I felt we have to get this in gear to do original material.
Mm-hmm.
And, at that point I was almost 22.
Sure.
So I thought, this is going to be stuck in the mud. I don't want to be the people that were coming to hear us at the teen centers then.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to be playing for their children and their grandchildren.
Yeah,
And
right.
you know what I mean? In a teen center. But it's, that was something I recognized then,
Mm-hmm.
that it's time to take this to the next level, or else stop doing it, one or the
Mm-hmm.
other. And that was a huge motivation. Funny thing, years later, decades later, my cousin told me, he said they were plotting anyway. They were going to replace me. Most of us, we didn't get along anyway. And I find that kind of laughable, that what are you going to do? Get somebody else and plug them in and do cover material to
Mm-hmm.
keep doing cover material,
Right.
So years later, when he told me that, I thought, well, that's kind of funny.
Mm-hmm.
Looking back on it, it's like, okay, so you're going to get somebody else to play the cover songs,
Mm-hmm.
whatever.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. Hey. Yep.
But it
So.
was, another thing
Mm-hmm.
that was very inspirational, in the original era, like after Silver Queen, I started hearing and reading about the New York music scene.
Mm-hmm.
So Dave Bradley and Bob Knight and I took a bus up there, and we said, let's go up and check it out.
Mm-hmm.
So we went to Manhattan and stayed in a flea bag of a hotel, roach infested flea bag.
Oh yeah.
There were so many roaches in this hotel.
Mm-hmm.
We took food with us, some snacks and stuff. We had to tie the bag up on there was a light cord, like where you pull the cord to turn the light on.
Jesus.
We hung the food off of that rope, off of that cord.
Yeah,
Because
right.
we didn't want to leave it sitting on the dresser or anything, because there's been roaches crawling all over it. So we actually had to tie the bag of food, tie the light cord around the bag, and hang it from that, and hope that would keep the roaches off of it.
Right. And when you're describing this hotel, I'm picturing like the typical Fleabag New York hotel you saw on TV and movies with you're trying to sleep, but the neon signs like right outside your window, and you come in and there's all these people sitting in the lobby on these dirty couches, and there's one person behind the counter, with a whole bunch of mailboxes. They hand you your key. What do you want here?
It was. I don't want to mention the name of the hotel now that I've said bad shit about it.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was right up in Manhattan.
Yeah.
And
but you're not in a hurry to stay there again, are you?
Well, believe it or not, we actually went back and stayed there again.
Oh, oh boy.
Now here's the reason, though, because we couldn't afford to stay in the better places.
Well, that's true too.
Hotels in New York, even then, were very, very expensive.
Oh yeah, yes they are.
So we just thought these prices are outrageous. So this place, the prices were appropriately low, and that's where we stayed. And when we returned, we stayed in the same dump. But anyway, what it led to was we wanted to go out there and see what the music scene was like, and everybody in Manhattan was playing original material.
Yep.
We went to multiple nightclubs. Nobody was doing cover material whatsoever.
Right.
Nobody. And we went up there many times and went to nightclubs all over the place, all over Manhattan. And it didn't matter whether it was a small nightclub in Greenwich Village or one of the larger hard rock clubs. Nobody was doing cover material.
No.
And that really left an impression on us that nobody is doing cover material.
Right.
So that just reinforced my belief and my awareness that this is the only way to go. Yeah, this is it. And again, that's what was carried on in these bands. Any band I was in after Silver Queen, every one of them did a considerable amount of original material.
Yeah.
And some of them, that was all they did.
Oh yeah. And but that's the way it was up there at the time too. And another thing too that I thought was really interesting was that because we played up there a few times, and my band, Orange Seed Parade, we did CBGBs, and the thing that it was a great club.
Big in name,
Yeah, big in name, and not big in this place wasn't very big in hygiene neither, when it, but another thing that I noticed too, though, was that when people would come, the club would empty out in between acts, and they would almost like go outside to let you get their stuff together and then come back in when the band was set up and ready to go, which I thought was really cool, because really when you'd be doing these, 4 or 5 band shows, especially here, it was, in between acts, it kind of ruins the illusion when you kind of want it to be a surprise when you start, or for it to be fresh, you don't want to start playing and it's kind of anticlimactic when you start your set after everybody's been watching you get in tune and stack up your amps.
Yeah.
It's kind of, they would go outside, they would come back in when you were ready, and it was like,
You don't have an entrance when everybody sees you humping your own amp up on the stage and then tuning up and all that. You have no entrance.
Right.
Yeah, that's the thing. But that was really a life-altering event, musically life-altering event. to see what was going on up there.
Yeah.
And even before I went to New York, I would see these bands, these top 40 bands playing in like the Holiday Inn circuit
Yeah. Yeah.
or some nightclub, and I would think to myself, Christ, I hope I don't end up like that.
Mm-mm.
And and a lot of these guys, they were 30-ish at the time and older, and they were still playing the cover circuit. And I used to see that, and I used to think that to myself, but for the grace of God, there go I. Okay.
Yeah, right,
I
right.
I did not want
Uh-huh.
to end up being 35 years old or worse and
Uh-huh.
playing the Holiday Inn circuit.
Yeah.
Because you're gonna do that when you're 45, and
Mm-hmm.
no.
Murph and the Magic Tones, right? From Blues
Yeah,
Brothers.
yes, exactly. It's fine if really you're not able to get a real job, and that's what you do.
Yeah.
But man, I just would not want to have done that
Yeah.
for a career.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah. And you know what, too? It's the depressing thing about that, especially when you're really trying hard to promote your original material. Had a guest on the show who I've had as another recurring guest. They've had a few CDs out over the years, and they have got decent material. It's good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They were selling CDs at one of their shows and they always did a mixture of originals and covers. They would still go out and do 3 sets a night, but it was probably about 50% or maybe 70% original or 70% cover, 30% original.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were during their break walking around saying, "You want to buy a CD? You want to buy a CD?" So somebody comes over and goes, "This one has you doing Barracuda on it, doesn't it?" And she's like, "No." And then she was like, "Why would we release a CD with us doing Barracuda?"
Yeah.
And like, no,
It-
you know.
yeah. Pretty much the only time a band is gonna release a cover song, and I'll give you a prime example of this.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was in New York, I met a lot of people in the music business, and and they would tell me some of these things. They would say, "Well, this is why this is done, or why that's done." If you have if an old song was a hit, and enough time has passed,
Mm-hmm.
and you have new music listeners, then then a current band can reissue it and they update it.
Mm-hmm.
Prime example of that is "You Really Got Me"
Oh
by
yeah, sure.
Van
Mm-hmm.
Halen. That, of course, came out in the mid '60s by the Kinks.
Mm-hmm.
"You Really Got Me." 20 years later, mid '80s, enough time had passed where you had a new group of music listeners who never heard of the Kinks.
Sure, right,
They never
right.
even heard the original version. I can remember maybe 20 years ago, I was talking to a younger guy in music, and I mentioned that, and he said, "Wow, I never knew that."
Mm-hmm.
Prime example. So, Van Halen, their first big hit was a cover song.
Mm-hmm.
The
Yes,
re,
yeah.
a guy in the record business told me one of the reasons they'll do that is they feel if it's already been a proven hit
Mm-hmm.
in another time, it'll probably be successful again with a new group of people listening
Mm-hmm.
to it. New, um, younger people who are younger now never heard the original. So the hope is, well, it can be a hit again.
Sure, sure. Well, the
And
Quiet Riot's another example of that too. You
yes,
know,
they were doing Slade.
yeah, and they
Yeah,
hated it,
Goodbye
but they.
Jane, an old Slade hit from the '70s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, prime example.
Right, right. I mean, I
So
always loved Slade, but I don't think they did. And
it, not yeah. I always liked Slade too. I used to play a couple Slade songs
oh yeah,
actually.
yeah.
Yeah, it, but that's why that would be done.
Mm-hmm.
But, um, but that's why that would be done.
Mm-hmm.
And, 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 and another reason it would be done, a record company may feel that that remake is a stronger song than anything the band has written.
Yeah, that's another
Any
thing. Yeah.
any of their original material, the record company might say it's okay, but it's not a hit.
Mm-hmm.
So let's do this because it was a hit once before.
Sure, sure.
But that's that's when you've got a record deal and you've got a major record label behind you and they're going to push it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the album is going to come out, and on that album, yeah, you got a cover as a hit, but on the album you got a bunch of your own material on there.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're a local band and you're putting out a CD,
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine doing a cover song at that time.
Right, right.
Yeah, no.
Yep. Well,
No.
what I would like to do, is with your permission, I'd like to stick, when I'm here and at the end of the interview for people to see the video and be able
Yeah,
to hear the song.
yeah.
And so, maybe just a couple more questions I'd like to ask.
Hmm.
You've in recent years, with the material you've been putting out, you've had pretty much like your go-to ensemble of musicians. Um,
Well, singers.
of singers, and yeah, some singer vocalists on your songs.
Hmm.
And so tell us a little bit about, the personnel for this one.
Well, on this song, when I'm here, I play um, all the instruments
Mm-hmm.
except the percussion. Fran plays the percussion
Yeah.
and sings on it.
Mm-hmm.
I play all the guitar parts and the bass guitar.
Mm-hmm.
Even on my other newer songs, like all the Mad Men at Play, I Knew All
Sure.
Your Dreams, I'm playing all the instruments.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote and recorded all the parts, all the keyboard parts, all the guitar parts, the bass.
Mm-hmm.
I have a drummer that I've been playing with on my recordings, Ed Haywood.
Mm-hmm.
He plays in a band called Temp, Temp, and then he fills in for a couple other bands. But and then he records on my songs. He's somebody else. I met him actually when I was putting Silver Queen together. Is when I met him. He was putting a band together, and we were 17 at the time. And I answered an ad. He had the paper, and I went down his house, and we auditioned. And that's when I got to meet him. And so we've been friends since then. There were
Mm.
several years, in between where we had kind of fallen out of contact. But it's a long story. But through a mutual friend, we ended up reconnecting.
Mm-hmm.
So he's been doing the drumming, except for Fran played the percussion on this song when I'm here. And then the other people are vocalists.
Mm-hmm.
One is Robin Osick. She's married to a best friend of mine since 6th grade. That's how I got to know her. He's a guitar player. They play in a duo in Hagerstown called East of Antietam.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Fran, he sings on some of my songs. And I met Fran in college.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually how far back we go. And then of course, the history of the bands he's played in with me. So, and then there's another guy, Jim or James Fitzpatrick. He's the guy
Mm-hmm.
you recommended.
Know him well, yes.
Yeah. So, great voice.
Mm-hmm.
And he sang on all the Mad Men at Play. He's in that video. And he was the other other voice on I'd Go Back for You.
Oh, okay.
He was doing all the harmonies on that. So, and then Robin's husband Jim, he did some backing vocals on a couple of the songs. So that's pretty much it. I mean, I do all the guitars, keyboards, bass,
Mm-hmm.
and then I use Ed on drums, and whichever singer I think fits the song most appropriately.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's great. I mean, like you've been doing this, and working, with various, all these folks in different capacities, and then some more on this song, some on the other. But
mm-hmm.
I mean, you've written some really, and produced some really nice stuff in recent years. This, I guess you would call it this era of your songwriting, and definitely very enjoyable. Now, where can we find all of these? You have a website and a YouTube page. Tell us where we can find those.
Yeah, the website is www.gs, it's my initials, gssongs.com, or you can just type in my name on YouTube, Greg Centers, and it'll bring up my YouTube channel.
Right.
But I'd really recommend going to the website, because there you see all the songs listed. And I also have pictures on there. I have a section on there called Stories, where I put up some, some brief stories about some aspect of something with music related. And I had, an Irish magazine called Irish Roots did a story on me, and that story is on my website. So that's really where all the information is.
I see. Right.
Yeah.
Right. I've looked through it. It's great, and I appreciate your support for my shows on there too. By the way.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, folks, and with your permission, we will, if you would grant us that permission, we will put on the video right after, we sign off from here for When I'm Here.
Yep.
And enjoy that. And I'll also, make sure you remember, we'll have the links available for you to go to gssongs.com and where to find Greg's material on YouTube. So, Greg, again, thanks again for joining us. Again, we always appreciate your support and your willingness to share with us here. And
it's fun, and thanks for your support.
Absolutely. Anytime.
A lot of support to my efforts.
So, folks, we've had it. We've had him back again. Greg Centers has joined us tonight to share some more stories of yesteryear in the Baltimore scene. What he's doing now, and like I said, check out his material. Definitely give him some hits and some spins, and we will see you all next time. Thanks again, Greg, for joining us tonight.
Thanks.
And we'll see you all next time on Fowl Players Radio.
This old ground of mine, all that was has changed, and I am now a stranger. the haze on a ship of fools. And now the shepherds have become the wolves. When I'm here, I can see it all, and the writing's on the wall. In this land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. When I'm here, I won't stay for long, just long enough to play a song. When the memories come to mind, there are some I'd live again.
Folks, thanks again for tuning in tonight. I had a great time sitting down with my good friend Greg Sinners, talking about his brand new song, When I'm Here, as well as the video that comes with it. Always fun to reminisce with him and let him tell his stories about the bands he's been in over the years. And always a pleasure. He's been a big supporter of the show and has contributed a lot of music that I play on 97 Underground on my show there. So, folks, thank you again for tuning in, and we hope you enjoyed this episode. We thank you for your support. Please remember to support our guests in their endeavors, and also to support this show. Foulplayersradio.com or youtube.com/@foulplayersradio. If you please hit the like and subscribe button, tell a friend, share our stuff, and remember again to support our guests in their endeavors, buying tickets to their shows. When you can purchase their music, or if you can purchase any kind of merchandise, please do so, because these guys are really working hard. And there's a lot of great treasures out there that you're depriving yourself of otherwise. So make sure you get on it. Folks, we will see you all next time. Michael Spedden here. Stick around, and we'll see you next time. This is Michael Spedden, Foul Players Radio, signing off.